So, what if I told you that by the year 2050, the scientist who finally cures cancer isn't a person at all, but an AI? I know, it sounds like something straight out of a movie, but it's just one of the incredible, and yeah, sometimes unsettling, predictions we're going to unpack today as we look at the science of 2050.
And let's just start with this bombshell from futurologist Nick Bostrom. He thinks that by 2050, human scientists might just be doing research as a hobby, unable to make any real contribution compared to a superintelligent AI. It's a really provocative thought, and it kind of frames just how dramatic the changes ahead could be.
So, with that in mind, let's fire up our time machine, set the controls for the year 2050, and take a very cautious peek outside. Okay, our first stop is the one that affects all of us. Right here, right now. Planet Earth. What's our home actually going to feel like in the middle of the century? Well, when it comes to our climate, the science doesn't point to just one single future. It's more like we're standing at a fork in the road, with two radically different paths in front of us. So, on one hand, you've got this really serious warning from top climate modelers. They're suggesting that the world will have already blown past that crucial 2-degree warming threshold, even before we hit 2050. That puts us on a path towards some pretty severe impacts. And this slide really lays out those two paths perfectly. On the left, we're in crisis mode. The conversation totally shifts to these desperate measures like geoengineering. We're talking huge, risky interventions in Earth's climate, and there's a real danger of nations just going for it on their own. But on the right, well, that's a much more optimistic path, where innovation completely flips the script. Carbon dioxide removal becomes a huge business, literally sucking CO2 out of the air and turning it into useful stuff like plastics, fuels, even medication. You know, those same forces that push and pull between innovation and risk, they're not just shaping our planet's future, they're also defining our journey off-world. So let's leave Earth for a minute and jump into the world of AI and space exploration. That year, 2050, it's become this really seductive deadline, It's the target for some of the most ambitious goals in human history. There's a new kind of space race happening, and this time, Mars is the ultimate prize. SpaceX has these incredibly bold plans to land a ship there as soon as 2026, with people following in the 2030s. And NASA is right there with them, aiming to get boots on the ground before 2050. What? And this is a big but. The journey is anything but guaranteed. And here's the catch. Experts like Amelia Jaworski are pointing out that the biggest hurdles might not be about building bigger rockets. They're about us, our fragile human bodies. We're talking about the long-term effects of space radiation and microgravity. The engineering might be the easy part. And while we're reaching for the stars, another revolution is kicking off right here on Earth. Remember that idea about AI researchers? Well, some experts are pretty convinced that by 2050, a machine learning system could make a discovery worthy of a Nobel Prize, maybe working 24/7 in these totally automated lights-out labs. Okay, so our journey is now going to turn both inward and outward at the same time. We're going from the vastness of space to the fundamental building blocks of the universe and of ourselves. In the world of physics, scientists actually see a plausible path to solving one of the universe's greatest mysteries, dark matter. The plan is to use these crazy advanced quantum sensors to spot tiny ancient black holes. If they can, it could finally tell us what the missing 85% of the universe's mass is made of. It would completely rewrite our understanding of, well, everything. But what about the mysteries inside us? Well, here's the twist. Progress might depend less on new machines and more on, well, you and me. The biggest thing holding us back from curing chronic diseases isn't a lack of tech, it's a lack of data. It's going to take millions of us volunteering to share our health information. But if we can get over that data hurdle, the payoff could be absolutely immense. We could finally identify concrete biological markers for psychiatric disorders, moving diagnosis away from what some call the poetry of psychiatry, just describing symptoms, and into a world of hard data. By 2050, the way we diagnose things now could look as outdated as ancient medical texts. So, as we're getting near the end of our trip, let's step back and ask a really fascinating question. How do futurists even try to spot the future before it gets here? What's their secret? Well, they look for something called weak signals. These are the weird little ideas and baby technologies of today that might seem niche or even kind of silly, but have the potential to grow into the huge, disruptive forces of tomorrow. I mean, think about it. Those first clunky, enormous mobile phones were totally laughed at, right?
but they were a weak signal for the smartphones we all have in our pockets today. Same thing for early drones. Science fiction writers were playing with the idea long before they became a real thing.
So, what's a potential weak signal we should be watching today? Well, one candidate is something called claytronics. It's this mind bending idea of programmable matter made from swarms of tiny robots. Just imagine a chair that can reassemble itself into a table, or creating a perfect replica of a human organ to test new drugs without risking a person's life. I know, it's far out, but it's a weak signal to keep an eye on.
And this, of course, brings us to the ultimate question, the one that science and science fiction have been obsessed with for centuries. With all these advances, will we finally, by 2050, have an answer?
Even if we do detect a potential sign of life by 2050, astronomer Renee Heller says we shouldn't expect a single eureka moment. Nope. He thinks it'll be a long, difficult, even contentious process of verification and debate. The answer, if it comes, will be this slow realization, not some sudden discovery, a gradual understanding that maybe we're not alone. So, I think the biggest takeaway from our entire journey to 2050 is this. The future isn't some movie we're just waiting to watch. From our climate to our technology, it's this huge landscape of possibilities. It's a future that isn't pre-written. It's one that we are all actively building together right now. The only question is, what kind of future are we going to choose to create?